Recording. So hello, my beautiful ladies. Thank you so much for answering the call or agreeing to me harassing you for coming online to share your experiences about your childhoods, about your backgrounds, about your experiences with really prejudice about being different. But obviously this discussion is focused on just the fact that we have a different skin color and usually a darker skin color. And I'd love to really hear, also for the benefit for everyone who will listen on replay, what it feels like to really grow up with certain prejudices and how it kind of, clouds or changes your perception of the world around you, and then how this changes for people who have children and who have mixed race children, what you feel in this current time for them. So it's really a collaborative effort here. I'm just holding the space for everybody else, and I've already kind of shared my story, so I don't want to repeat everything again, but obviously this is a circle. We're going to share and participate with each other. And I just would like to introduce some of the lovely ladies in our circle. I did actually ask men to join too, and they were very okay to have a conversation with me alone, which I found quite interesting because they were okay to speak to me on their own, but not for public. So thank you for being courageous, ladies.
I'm not ready yet.
Yeah, I think the time will come. I think a lot of us are working in the spiritual fields or the self-development fields, even if we've come from other backgrounds. And my personal view, and I would love to get your view as well as we continue the conversation, is that the time of the divine feminine is really rising, but there seems to be so much fear in men to speak about what they actually think, both white men and colored men. It really doesn't matter. Yeah. And I think it's really a time of collective purging, like unity of the sexes, of the races, of everything. So before I go further onto my tangent, I would like to introduce, first of all, our beautiful circle sister, Rocky. And Rocky's from South Africa, and she's now living in the UK. She's a pharmacist and working in the corporate world by day, and also trained as a theta healer and a spiritual counselor. So Rocky, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
I then would like to introduce my beautiful friend, Teresa. Teresa is the beautiful lady with the sunflower in her hair, my favorite flower. And Teresa is a self-love oracle, an author, a speaker, and an energy player. And she's just opened her Quantum Renaissance Collective. It's a portal to recreate, rebirth, and rejoice in self-love to the founding members. And I will put all these links below for all of you to get in touch with them or ask them questions or enroll in their programs if you feel guided. And I also have my beautiful sister, Ana Ortiz Aragon. And I don't have your bio, so you're going to have to please tell us a few words about yourself. Could you maybe unmute yourself for a second?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ana Ortiz Aragon. I'm from San Francisco, and I live in St. Louis. I'm a professional organizer, and I also love Reiki and Feng Shui and all the magical things. And Simran and I were in a course together, so that's how we met, and I'm just like blessed to be here and excited.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, I think this is really like a circle to share. So I'm like not a teacher. I'm literally just going to guide the conversation. So anyone can jump in whenever they want to. But if I could maybe start with Rocky, because I was really touched when I first put out this call for people to join me on this exploration of personal experiences. And I would love to understand a little bit about, your childhood growing up. And could you please tell us how that was like in South Africa?
At first I want to say thank you, because it was the first time I spoke about it. It's amazing. I'm from South Africa, and I was born in apartheid South Africa. So I'm a 70s baby. Apartheid was, part of the law. Yeah, it was systematically part of the law. They had three acts. I don't know if you know, but very quickly I'll tell you. One was the Race Classification Act. So in South Africa, folks were given a classification, and there were four: black, white, Indian, and colored. Colored was mixed race. And so that was part of the law. The second was mixed marriages were prohibited. That was an act. And so mixed marriages were not allowed. And the third one was the Group Areas Act. And the Group Areas Act was you had to stay with your own kind. So they literally had areas designated. So Indians stayed amongst Indian people, Black stayed amongst Black people. And I think the whole method behind this was, divide and conquer. Because they understood, if we were together, we would collude, and, that would.
You would come together and there would be no apartheid.
Absolutely. So I think when you put a call out, I have denied this part of my whole life. I'm in my late 40s and I have not expressed this. So whenever I had healing sessions with you, Simran, or with anybody, I've never brought this up because I said, I wasn't impacted. Because by the time the late 70s came, the civil rights movements were strong and apartheid was, teetering off, but still it was there. And you made me think about how it affected my life. And I said, okay, let me go back to when I was young. And it's amazing the amount of things that came up for me. And it made me a little sad as well, because it's a part of me I denied. So let me give you an example. I was probably 5 or really young, and this somehow remains really impressed in my memory. But my mom and I, we were walking, we were in a public area, and there was a block of toilets, and I wanted to go. And I walked towards one of them, and it was in Afrikaans, blankers and knee blankers, and that's white and non-white. But blankers in Afrikaans means white. But I didn't understand it, and I thought it was non-white, blankers, black. And my mom almost, oh no, you don't go there, you go to the other one. And it was something as simple as that, but it left such an impression because I remember it, And so my life, I always said, I come from an Indian background and it's very, conservative. But actually, I now come and think of it, my parents were born in apartheid, Racial segregation started a long time in South Africa. My parents were part and parcel of the same system. And so they learned their main way of living was survival, security. And so that's so inherent in who I am. And, there's so much about my life that I didn't appreciate how it was impacted. I lived my whole life from birth to 18, only being with my kind, living with Indian people, eating the same kind of foods, speaking with them, socializing with them. We weren't even allowed to go to cinemas that were not, that's to that extent. But for me, that was life, that was normal.
That was
right?
normal,
Yeah, so when it's normal, you don't make much of it. And there was this tension or this underlying knowing that white was superior, so they were better. And so we just carried on. I was in my high school around the age of 15, and there was a group of activists in our school that were boycotting the tripartite education. So we had different educational boards, an Indian education board, a white, and funding was based on your race. And you knew where you fitted in a stacking order. And I stepped out and went onto the field to boycott. And I promise you, I wish I could say I was so passionate about it, but the only thing I was worried about is, oh my God, am I going to be safe? Are the police going to come? So I sit here today and I think I wish I had done more, but I just did what I knew best, and was to keep myself safe. At the age of 18, I went to university, and at university, it's the first time I was amongst white people.
And was this already at the end of apartheid? Or
no, so apartheid ended in 1991. I started university that 1992, but the first independent election, full democratic, was 1994. So there was still that, and I can tell you, I just gravitated to Indian people because I couldn't even speak to them. But this is just not university. When I went to work, when I came to live in the UK, I realized it. I thought, oh, I'm not confident. That's why I don't speak up. But it's because I didn't sound like them. And so I immediately thought I wasn't intelligent. I'm not going to come across intelligently. And so there's a whole, a generation of trauma, that I need to work on. And so for me, this was an opportunity to give voice to a part of me that I kind of shoved in the background, just didn't want to speak to. And, so it's the first time I'm talking about this. And while I feel sad, I feel a sense of liberation as well, because I am now giving voice to my inner child that was crying out, what is this? And I wish I questioned more, but I think we all wish we did things differently. But at
We
least
just
I'm
did
here
the best
today.
we could, right?
Yeah, and I have the courage now to speak about it.
I'm so proud of you, and thank you so much for sharing this story, because I think a lot of us, I mean, we'll talk about this later as well, but I had repressed a lot of this stuff myself, because I just thought, oh, get over yourself, and like get back on the horse and don't play a victim. And I have to say, I didn't grow up in apartheid, and I've grown up in what you would say are liberal democracies, and in the West, and I spent also some time in Hong Kong. But I have to say, when I was a child, especially in Hong Kong, actually, ironically, not so much in England, but maybe I was just too young to know. I really felt it in Hong Kong, that the color of my skin or being different was even something to consider. And because I didn't necessarily grow up say in apartheid, where it was just known that you are segregated. I just thought everyone is the same. And then I would react to other people's behavior towards me, and kids' behavior, right? Because I'm in school. And again, I don't blame kids, because they learn by what's happening around them, right? Kids are not born racist, as everybody of us knows. So how would you, Rocky, because you have kids now, right? And how would you say their experience is different from your experience?
I think my kids were so my daughter was a year when we moved to the UK. My son was born here. And, thankfully, they don't see the same thing. And, I'm so grateful that we have honest conversations. Like my daughter, 16 now, and she's very much part of this whole Black Lives Matter, and she's been posting about it. But the fact is that we're having more open conversations. But it's the first time I even told her my story.
Wow.
I sat with her and I said, yeah, I remember this. I remember a time when my brother was picked up by the police because he was wearing black on June 16. June 16 was considered, that was when in a black township called Soweto, there was school kids were killed in 1976. But after that, if you were seen wearing black on June 16, it was a form of a rebellion.
And right.
Yeah, and the police, if they seen you, they pick you up. And my brother was picked up, and I was telling her all of this.
Wow.
And she was just like, oh my God, Mom, how come you didn't? I said, because I just didn't, I just was in denial. I just didn't want to look at it. But my kids are different. And, I think conversations on the dinner table are so important. And we have to call up on our own.
Totally.
I have to, like my daughter, we were saying something and she goes, oh, Mommy, that's not very nice. And I'm like, that's what we need. Is within our own families, we need to start correcting each other. Because, a lot of time we say things in jest and we think it's funny. Actually, it isn't.
Yeah.
And this has just been the revelation. This is what we needed, the education and it's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah. And actually it's our kids, it's the younger generation, it's within families, I think, that it begins. And, I have to put my hand on my heart. I mean, I have family as well. And, we're all brought up in the same way. And the way my brothers see things and the way I see things are totally different. And, there's so many layers of prejudice within families. That for me, this is all coming up now. And some of it I'm surprised about. Some of it makes me really sad. Because, where we love our family members, but then we see their views about certain things. And you realize how much prejudice there is within families.
Yeah,
And I see Teresa shaking her head a lot. So please, Teresa, tell us about your story. You're from the US, but you're basically a child of the world because you've lived everywhere.
Yeah, I've lived everywhere. I've lived on a few continents. But yeah, it's funny you should say a prejudice in one's own family. I also just want to touch on something that Raki said about you looking at, your own stuff about this subject. And yeah, I was talking to another Black friend, and we were saying that not only is this like, I thought it was just going to be a pandemic. And I said, well, this is a great opportunity. It's like a hard reset for humanity. And then I was like, oh no, actually it goes so much deeper. And what is happening now, it's not just for white people to look at all. We all have to look at it because, it's for years, we've been like putting a plaster on a really deep wound. And we're like, oh, that happened. Let's just put a plaster on it and forget about it. Let's just now we've really taken the plaster off and we have to heal the wound.
Totally.
Like, yeah, it's insane.
You're making a really good point, and we're going to hear your story. But on the point that you've just made, I was speaking to my other girlfriend, Tonya, who was supposed to be on, she's not able to make it. And she was, we talked, gist, as she said, because she's from Nigeria. And she said, she's happy to come on. And I said, look, I think we're at a momentous moment of history. Maybe I'm like super idealistic, optimistic, I don't know. And she's like, well, I'm not sure, I'm a little bit pessimistic. So it's almost like, is this like a flash in the pan that then people are going to forget? Or is it really the start of a movement? And for me, maybe I'm pie in the sky, but I think it's the start of a movement. I think it's a start of real change. But what do you think?
To me, it feels like a start to real change only because it's absolutely global. Just like the pandemic was, this is it is happening everywhere. Not just like one city in the UK, it's every city.
Everywhere.
Not just the UK, also in France. Also, it is literally happening everywhere, and that makes me go, this is different.
This is something,
right?
All 50 states in the US, right? Not just one.
Not just one, exactly.
Okay, we don't have to go at the moment into all the rabbit hole about it's all organized. Yeah, it is. But to have 50 states coordinated like that, to me, it's like, of course, there's some puppet masters, which a lot of us will agree. However, this really seems spontaneous to me. Like, like the start of, like the French Revolution was spontaneous. It didn't have a leader. It's just people were so fed up at some point at the injustice.
Oh, and that's the thing. That's the thing. People were fed up with injustice before the pandemic started. Injustice has been going on in a very big way over the past 20 years, especially since like Y2K, everything's just like, at warp speed, everything, the injustice has been insane. Especially in the West. I think justice has always been there in the East, but people in the West were especially seeing it. And the fact that they've had a lot of time indoors, which was also frustrating to them, a lot of time indoors, sometimes with people who they didn't want to be with. So it's really spurred on, especially with the younger generation, because basically the powers that be have basically taken away part of their youth, right? I know that if I was 20 years old, I'd be out there every day as well. I know I would, And
also, it's strange, not strange. It's totally understandable that this is coming out now, as it's been said so many times, because of the power of social media and the mobile phone. Like, it's been happening for centuries.
Yes.
But no one was made to look at it in front of your face. Like, you can't ignore this anymore. Right? So it just seems like the pandemic and the final knee on the throat, which has happened before, by the way, was the straw that broke the camel's back. But it's been happening for fucking centuries. Sorry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the people have had the time and the social media, and they're just so frustrated. I mean, people are frustrated, and that's why it's happening the way it's happening, for sure.
So Teresa, when you were growing up, where did you grow up and how was that?
I grew up in Boston, in America, which is, very liberal, middle class, college area. And, I can't say that my childhood was absolutely, there was basically not really any racial prejudice.
Yeah.
Not really. I can't remember any, actually. Weirdly enough, I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. So I was different, but I never felt any prejudice at all growing up, except in the family.
Wow.
Yes, because I had a cousin who was darker than I am, and I found out years later why she didn't like me, and it was because I was lighter skinned.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
She
you
used to
bring
start
up a
fights with me
really
and all sorts.
important point because I know this happens like in India as well, where every society has racism. It's not just white
But-
and black, but
Yeah.
even though this is what we're focusing on right now, but every single society and culture has an ingrained racism. Indians as well, like like black people, like for some reason they think that lighter skinned people are somehow higher in the pecking order.
Yeah.
But it's really funny because this came up in a discussion earlier today in a circle I sat in. That light skin higher up in the pecking order comes from when the colonial came in and had so-called house niggers, and they're the ones that they lived in the house.
Wow.
while the darker ones were out in the fields.
Wow.
So so that's where that's some serious ancestral trauma there.
Ancestral, cultural, patriarchal.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so many systems that are involved here, which is why, sometimes I think about the task ahead and so much has to be changed.
Which is why we have work to do as well.
Yeah, totally.
We have to unpack that as well.
You've lived all over the world and you've traveled all over the world. And what has been your experience of your journeys in different places?
I've got to say, like, the only time I've ever had anybody, like, say something to my face, weirdly enough, was in London, in Brixton.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, huh? Because Brixton, if you don't know it, it's
yeah, I was just about to explain to people, but please explain the makeup of Brixton, which is a suburb of a part of London.
Back in the day, it was very much Caribbean community.
Yeah.
And this was back in the day. This was probably about 20 years ago. And I was with my husband at the time, who was white English.
Yeah.
But yeah, walking down Brixton High Street, I had a black guy come up to me and go, "What are you doing with him?" And the whole sucking teeth thing. And I was just kind of like, wow. Yeah, that's the only time anybody's been in my face about it.
Wow. I.e., we should all there should be no mixing.
Yeah.
You should be with a black guy. You should be with a white woman. Like, what is this going on?
Exactly.
Kind of like what Rocky was talking about.
Yeah, that was the law.
Exactly. Yeah, madness.
So they're basically telling people you can be with this person, but you cannot be with this person. And that's why we say, like, this is a free world, but okay, apartheid was not free, but in the UK, we like to think that we're free, but actually it's so much ingrained prejudice and not everyone experiences. So I'm not like blowing this out of proportion.
No, not at all.
But it's almost like a checks and balances within society of who you can be with, what looks good and what doesn't look good, or you're a traitor to your own, or all of this kind of stuff, which is
exactly
so bizarre.
Exactly.
And, so thank you for sharing that. And also thank you for sharing that the fact that this, like, racism, not everyone feels it in the same way, right? I felt it when I was younger. I have to say I have not felt it for a very long time. Probably since I became a teenager. And I don't know why that is, but maybe things have changed. Maybe I became more thick-skinned, but I can say that I had repressed certain memories
Yeah.
only up until a couple of years ago, where I couldn't remember huge chunks of my childhood. And now I remember because it was because of bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Rocky, I think you probably felt some of that. Like you said, you'd never spoken about this before. And it almost seems like now people have permission.
Permission.
It's crazy, but it's permission to talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Although
I think I made it normal, right? I thought this is normal. So I didn't want to, because also part of speaking out loud is accepting that there was a problem.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to, so it
and
was,
not shoving it under the carpet to just say, oh, it's like, I have a brother who's like, oh, you're wasting your time. It's never going to change. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so out there with it, sharing my own pain. And for me, sharing this pain, and it was painful to make that video, by the way, because I had to accept parts of myself that I had rejected myself. So not only did I feel rejected outside, I rejected myself.
Yes.
So for this, it's like a healing to say, you know what, I'm going to talk about what happened because this is part of my own healing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
this is the giant opportunity to face those shadows that we've down the way. Yep. Absolutely.
Completely. Anna, I would love for you to join our conversation. Anna's living in the US. And Anna, could you please tell us a little bit about your experience? And you have 2 kids you were talking about. I'd love to hear your story.
Sure, thank you. Yes. So I grew up in San Francisco. I am half Peruvian. And I grew up traveling a lot. I was very blessed. I've been really into culture, ever since I was born, basically. And where I went to school was a very white suburban area. And so it was really tough being mixed or of color in that neighborhood. And, I love California, San Francisco. You can go down the street and hear 3 or 4 different languages. It's really beautiful. So it was interesting. I spent a lot of time in Peru with my family, kind of learning about my mom's history, and they are basically European mutts, and it's been interesting. And then as I grew up, I was just always into this. So I went to a diversity conference in high school. In college, I signed up for the diversity school. And then when I became a teacher, I worked in juvenile detention and lots of alternative schools. So I really immersed myself in learning about all parts of humanity. And my heart, I'm just here. I'm here for all the people. I have a son, and he's quad racial, which is really beautiful. And I'm excited to teach him about his Peruvian side, about my mom's basically 5 generations Oakland, California side. And then before that, if I can learn about my European roots. And then my son's father is African American, and I forgot what tribe, but it's a Native American tribe. So I'm yes, love that. And then my husband is African American and Puerto Rican. And I don't know, I've just always loved culture, and that's something that's so important to me. Sometimes it's hard for me to understand people that have no interest in that. But I'm here for the people, and I'm blessed to listen to you guys and hear all of your beautiful stories.
Well, you're literally living the multicultural, diverse family life. And for you, it's so normal. Actually, for me, listening to your story, for me, that's totally normal. But I also understand so many millions of people out there don't see that as normal, or they could see it, but it's not for them, right? They're not living that experience. And I remember you shared a beautiful, I'm going to post your Instagram handle. So Anna shared the most beautiful, heart-wrenching story about what she feels about being a mom of mixed race children, and the fact that you're sometimes afraid for your sons. And I'd love you to tell us what your fears are.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I live in St. Louis now. St. Louis is very black and white, which is so blowing my mind. A complete culture shock from San Francisco, and it's been really violent over here. It's been very peaceful, but also super violent. And it's interesting because my husband is into the military. He loves, you know, he's a former St. Louis City police officer in like the toughest neighborhood out here. Like we both do that. We have this like martyr, like warrior, like I'm in for the toughest situations, you know? And so my sons being like basically quad racial, obviously they're not white, like their skin is like super mixed and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I worry about, you know, like what school district, obviously if they get pulled over, like I even fear for my life when I get pulled over, and I've been pulled over way more than my husband actually.
Wow.
Yeah, like literally I've had my sister be arrested for no reason, same with my white cousin also. So it's just like everywhere, it's everywhere, and we're just living in fear basically, but like it's real fear because it's really happening like every day all over the world and every single culture, like we talked about earlier.
The fear that you're speaking about, is it the fact that you're literally, is the fear linked to the police, or is it some other fear?
Yeah, but also just like racism in general. Like, you know, there are like people that will go and like burn your house down and like shoot you. Like, doesn't have to be police, but there are just like anger and like this huge like weird patriarchy to like the whiteness, and I just cannot get down with it. Like, yeah, like every generation is going to be more mixed, and I always knew this growing up. I knew as like a 5-year-old, I was like, Mom, I'm having a very mixed family, just so you know. And like I don't know, I think this is the way to heal the world. It's like if you don't have any friends or family that have different cultures and experiences and, you know, like religious views, like, you know, food, diet, things, you're never going to learn anything. Like you just have to surround yourself with different experiences, and you can choose to see it as super scary, or you can choose to see it as like so amazing and like really the best way to be a world citizen.
So, you know, you bring up a very interesting topic here about like scariness and this fear. And I'd really like to try to understand or try to deconstruct this, because exactly as you say, the way that I see humanity is, oh my God, how interesting, like Caribbean food or Nigerian food or Indian food or like a hot dog, or there's Thai food,
Yeah.
all of this, like, you know, kind of a smorgasbord of different cultures and delicacies. So when you're talking about fear, what exactly is the fear about?
I think
Because
it's
everyone
tough.
says, oh, it's like it's because, you know, people are afraid of the other, whatever the other would be. What exactly are they afraid of? The
I
food?
think it's scarcity at the end of the day, like
Scarcity.
like yeah,
Yeah.
like somehow I won't have enough, or somehow my family won't make it, or somehow my people are going to be played by somebody else, or yeah, like it's got to be like really when you break everything down, it's love or scarcity, love and fear. So it's got to be that.
Yeah.
So basically, if you have something, it means it's that someone else has less, which is like this zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like that's a money fear, that's a myth, yeah, in so many ways.
If you have something, somebody's obviously looking behind your back and is ready to take it from you when you're not paying attention. That's really ingrained in the American system.
Now, is that a race
Wow.
thing, or is that a like something else?
It's something else, but I think race is used to keep
Right.
it going.
Amplify.
Yeah. Racism is used to feed it.
Yeah. So the way you're saying it, that it's being used to feed it is like, oh, where let's say you're a black house owner or like a shop owner or a cafe owner, and the way it's that I understand it's being used in this way is that, oh, I'm afraid that the black people are going to come and like take it away from me. Is that what it's about? Because I'm really trying to filter down, like people just say, oh, it's ignorance and fear. I was like, but how?
The American system is very different.
Yeah.
it is very different. It's not so much that like if you're a black shop owner that you're afraid white people are going to take it away from you, but it is like, okay, I'm a shop owner, somebody's going to take it away from me.
Yeah.
And then the powers that be play race into it, like, because it's a divide and conquer thing. They play race into it because that's the easiest one, but they also, you know, they also play sexism.
Well,
Would you agree, Anna?
Yes, absolutely. Like, it is so systemic. It's like unbelievable. Like, literally real estate, what neighborhoods you're allowed or not allowed to buy in. Like the money, like think about the 1%.
Like
sorry?
who's gonna like when you talk about this being allowed, because you know I'm not in the US system, so I think it's really educational for us to understand what does it mean to be allowed to live somewhere.
Well, like real estate agents won't even talk to you, or you can't get the permits, or you know, like the neighbors will sign a petition and not let you move in, or you'll just be arrested all the time, but you never even want to go to that neighborhood.
Exactly.
Like there's just so many like, fuck you, get the fuck out of here.
Or you'll be threatened, like if you're a black family who's like, you know, got some money and you move and they allow you to move into the gated community, you know, you might find burning cross on your front lawn.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And you're watched like a hog, like literally.
So I have to say, like, this is super educational for me, because just maybe I'm like super naive, but I'm sure if I'm naive, there's plenty of people who don't know this.
Big time. I used to say America's an apartheid system with like shiny TVs. They don't call it apartheid, but it is.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I can tell you, you know, when in the 90s we moved from the Indian, where we were living in the Indian township, to a previously white. And when the day we went to go and visit, we had this white family, the neighbors. They said, "Oh, the coolies," you know, that's what they would refer to. The coolies are moving next door, and I promise you, we were more scared than anything. We just kept ourselves. So while we did move there because it was closer for us to get to university, we didn't mingle with our neighbors. We just kept ourselves. And eventually that we built a bridge, and it was, you know, we were saying hello and we were talking to each other. But for the first few years, I can tell you, we were so scared. We just we didn't want to create any fuss. We didn't want to call out any attention to ourselves, so we just kept quiet.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I can believe that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, apartheid is like living strong in the US.
Absolutely.
And you know what? It's probably also here in the UK. It's probably here in the UK as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we have a different sort of view in London, but yeah, another place.
Because, and that's exactly, you're making a very good point, because London is not representative of the whole of the United Kingdom.
No, definitely not.
And which is why so many of us were so surprised that Brexit happened, because we're living in a
London's its own entity. It doesn't even have anything to do with the rest of the country.
Right. And so basically apartheid exists in the United States, but they don't like to call it that.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like different areas and different neighborhoods almost police each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, you know, and the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because so many white people will never, I mean, I didn't even know about this, right?
I didn't know that.
So many white people will never have experienced this. So when they say, like, I'm colorblind, I don't see anything. And now I'm learning as well that to say you're colorblind is actually part of the problem. Right?
Exactly.
Because actually to say you're colorblind means, oh, I really don't mind, everyone is the same to me. But we didn't grow up in the same way. We don't have this, a lot of us don't have the same inherent discrimination that we grew up with. And I have to say, I probably have it much less than people, like, for example, in the US, like in Harlem, maybe.
Well, I was even explaining to a friend the other day, a white friend in America, I was saying, even now, if I chose, not that I would do, but if I chose to apply for a job at, say, Goldman Sachs,
right,
because I have a very English name, they wouldn't be able to discriminate me from my CV just from my name. But if I turned up with this hair, seriously, she's going, no. And I was like, yeah, even now.
You know what's so funny? Well, as you know, I worked at Goldman
Sachs. I know.
So, you know, in Goldman, there was this thing known as the diversity committee. And I have to say, I literally think it's a box that they had to tick. just
Mhm.
to say to have a diversity committee, because I can tell you a lot of the stuff that was happening to me, and if it was happening to me, it was happening to others.
Mhm.
It's far from diversity compliant.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
almost like, you know, corporations, and I think this is part of the structural thing we're talking about, is a lot of corporations pay lip service, like to have quotas and things like this, but it's not going to the root of the issue. You can't put a bunch of MDs together in diversity training so that they can just tick a box to say that they've done it.
Exactly.
But that's what happens in so many organizations.
I'm in the corporate world at the moment, and there's a diversity, committee in everyone.
Right.
But it's as you said, the tick boxes, you know, sharing culturally what foods we eat, and it's very superficial, the discussion.
Oh, big
Nobody's
time.
getting down to the meat of the
Exactly. I saw a hilarious meme last night of like this white guy like sweating and because he had two buttons to pick. He had a button with a black square and a button with a rainbow square because it's Pride Month, and he was like sweating trying to like decide which button to press. I was just like, that is genius.
Crazy. I mean, and the thing is that I would also like to get your opinions on some quite, let's say, delicate topics, because I like to go there. And that's about this whole, you know, we're trying to be all come together, let's say, in unity consciousness. This is ultimately where humanity is ascending to. And at the moment, we're seeing more polarity than ever before, probably because it was always there, but now it's right out there for us to see. And you see it a lot on social media where people are feeling like they're walking on eggshells because they don't want to say the wrong thing, you know, because I can say I did it myself where, you know, then came the square about Black Lives Matter and Blackout Tuesday. And I, like all the freaking lemmings, did it. And then 2 hours later, I was reading what that actually means. I was like, oh my gosh. So I took it down. I actually admitted, look, I made a mistake. And I just fell into the trap of the puppeteers that want to blank out all the algorithms, right? So no information comes out. And the thing is, most people, they kept it up probably because they were not aware.
Because most people aren't aware, and most people jumped on wanting to be seen like they were part of a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, for example, I take my intention. I wanted to be in solidarity, but I needed to do my research. Right? So then I realized
I tell everybody, I was like, you have to be discerning.
Yeah.
You have to be discerning because there is so much misinformation. It's not even funny. I mean, I was watching, and even at the beginning of this, remember when the media was like, Trump's telling people to inject their cells with bleach and blah, 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 right? And weirdly enough, the night before, I sat up watching his press conference. I have no idea why, but I actually watched that particular press conference.
Yeah.
In no way did he say people should inject themselves with bleach.
Right.
In no way did he say that. And they chopped and changed it enough to make it look like that. And they kept perpetuating it. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
So you literally have to question everything.
Everything. That's the whole point. You have to question every single thing we see.
Everything. But also, here gets really confused because there's so much coming at it. It gets so confusing in here. Sit in here. Does it resonate? Okay. Then do your research from a calm place. But, you know, most of it you can completely ignore because it's all bullshit. Sorry, I swore. It's all bullshit made to make us react in an animal reaction.
That's this whole divide and conquer thing, where the more we get riled up, the more everyone follows a particular, let's say, movement without actually understanding what is the intention behind putting a freaking black square up.
Exactly.
You know, so I took it down, but I have to admit I fell into that hole. And I like to think that I like to be a little bit awake, but it's very easy to fall into that hole.
Oh, absolutely.
And the whole
That's how the pendulum swings. When the pendulum is swinging, it's easy to get, oh, it's swinging this way now. Instead of just standing back and observing the pendulum going, oh, this is interesting.
Right. And then this whole distinction between, you know, I've seen a lot of people posting, mostly white people, when they're saying, this is mostly the white people saying this, that, oh, why is it not that all lives matter? Why are you just saying Black lives matter? And Teresa, I'd love you to explain this to us.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like a form of spiritual bypassing. Yes, all lives matter. Of course they do. They always have done. It's just that there's a highlight of Black Lives Mattering now because, like, for such a long time they haven't. And you know, it's that kind of all lives matter as well as kind of the equivalent of, well, I'm not racist. My best friend's Black.
Right.
Okay, that may be true. However, when was the last time you had a discussion with him about, when was the last time he, you know, was attacked by a racist? Or, like, you know.
Exactly. And, you know, that's, and it's because we're friends, and I have, like, Nigerian friends, and I have to tell you, not all of them wanted to come today to talk about this stuff. And for many reasons, which I respect, but it's almost like, even when you kind of, the platform is there, people are afraid to take it. And, you know, some people are out there protesting, all power to them, amazing. I think it's amazing. We all do things in different ways. For me, this is my way to do it. Because I want to actually sit down and have a discussion about real people's lives, right? I want to, protesting is a part of it, education is a part of it, social media is a part of it, but also, so I'm, again, being the devil's advocate because I'm not supporting this, but I've also seen comments where they're like, you know, what happens when, like, a Black person comes in and loots a white person's place? How is that not more important? How is that not important? And can we not at least talk about that? And I was like, you're missing the entire fucking point. But it just seems like sometimes if people want to stick to their views, it really doesn't matter.
No.
Right? Yeah. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm trying to uncover this, because I think it's an unconscious bias, but it's a bias, right?
Absolutely.
And the whole point of it being unconscious is for us to make it conscious. Because, you know, I've been engaged to white men. I've had the loves of my life who've been white. I have white godchildren. I mean, I in no way see a difference, but I also acknowledge we have not all experienced the same things. And also it, as you guys said before, the extent of melanation, let's say, of your skin is also a pecking order of things. So maybe I will experience less racism because I can pass for a whole range of things than, say, someone who is much darker than me. But it's so unconscious.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a very real thing. You know, even in the Indian community, that's a very real thing. You know, it's somehow the fairness of your skin determines somehow it just gives you this unsaid connotation of more intelligence, more this, more that,
more desirable,
you know?
Exactly. And it's prevalent everywhere. But at the moment, you know, like, we're having this discussion because we're trying to bring attention to the plight of all the Black people who have been suppressed throughout history. And again, you know, people will bring up, oh, what about Oprah Winfrey and Obama? They are the exceptions. You know, I mean, how many Oprah Winfreys and Obamas are there?
Are they?
And so when these discussions, as arguments come up, I actually find it really puerile. I was like, how do you not see this? This is the exception.
Yeah, but in the space of, I don't even like using the word white privilege, they haven't had to think about it.
No.
Because it's not a thing for them.
No.
And when somebody Black brings that fact up, they're like, Yeah, but I'm not racist because, but it's not a, you know, it's like, what's a good analogy to use? You know, it's like if you, oh, I can't even think of a good analogy to use, but you know, like if you didn't know, like, okay, you know how some people grow up in places where there's snow and some people don't. And it's like
their whole life.
yeah, exactly, like you know, you grew up in Bali and you've seen pictures of snow your whole life, but like you've never experienced it, so it doesn't even compute.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that's also something I'm finding really interesting right now, that so many people, and actually I really do feel it, maybe again I'm being super optimistic, that I'm really sensing that people are starting to get it.
Mm.
Like, Anna, where you are, do you feel that too, or do you think I'm like being a little bit too simplistic?
Actually, you cut out just a little bit. Could you rephrase that question for me?
Yeah, so I was like, I am, let's say, optimistic that there could possibly be a change from all of this. But a
Got
lot
it.
of people say, oh, you're being really simplistic, and 1 week doesn't change the 400 years of oppression. What are your views given where you're sitting right now? Because you're right in the middle of it in the US.
Right. Yes. I mean, I have hope for sure. Like, love is so much stronger than fear, always. Like, we will prevail. No freaking doubt about it. And, however, at the same time, a lot of things that are here right now will no longer exist because we will have evolved past them. And that's institutions, it's
Yeah.
people, it's, you know, like the education system, I think will forever change. Healthcare, technology, borders, the military will change, like all of it. You know, it's in the stars for sure, like astrology wise.
Yeah.
And it's happening right in front of us. Like never, but this is basically like, this is bigger than the civil rights movement officially, which is exciting. Yeah, like we're,
Thank you for saying that, because
yes.
you know, I was having this discussion with my dad, because he's like, well, you know, in the 60s we had Martin Luther King and everything, and like what changed? I was like, but okay, they, not a huge amount changed, but they did come out of segregation. They could vote, you know, which is a big cry from how it was before. Yes, there have been huge injustices since then, but I believe energetically we're in a different climate at the moment, and it's very difficult for me to explain it to the older generation, because they just feel like, oh, everything in history is cyclical and things don't really change. And I don't believe that, because like you, I believe structures have to change. It's built on false systems of control and domination. And when we talk about the patriarchy goes so deep that you don't even realize it's a patriarchy, right? It's become a bad word. And men and women have been manipulated by it. It's not just men suppressing women. We're all a victim of this system. And so when you talk about the structures, which is like astrologically, you know, absolutely it's in the stars that structures have to crumble. Governments have to change, the way we police, the way we have healthcare, the way we educate. History books have to be rewritten. You know, it was like a bunch of lies that we learned.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the task is so huge that most people can't even compute.
No, but this is the thing that's happening as well now, because the veil, the curtains, the veil's
no veil, pretty much.
Exactly, the veil is thinning, and even, you know, I've been making friends on Twitter like crazy over the past few weeks.
I imagine you have.
Yeah, Twitter's where my activist comes back. And I met this, like, she's only 18 or something, and it was because I commented, and we're like friends now. Met this young girl on Twitter, this young white English girl, because I saw one of her replies to a comment saying, she was like, I was a royalist, I love the royal family, and I found out something today. And so we started talking, and I'm like, young people like her, you're giving me so much faith. You're giving me so much faith, because they see the veil thinning, and then
I've noticed this as well with my clients in their 20s, for example. Oh my God, I'm not just saying they're woke because it's a cool word to use.
No,
they're really fucking awake.
Exactly. Exactly.
I can tell you, my daughter's 16.
Yeah.
And things that comes out of her mouth. I mean, I don't even think I was talking like that at that age.
No.
What I also feel is we've reached critical mass now. And so we have to keep this conversation going, because what we will see is structures coming down and things, things changing. But, inherently, we have to change how people think and feel. And so we have to be willing to do the work for the next generation to enjoy.
Exactly.
I 100% agree.
Because I honestly don't think we will pave the path, but I don't know if we will have the opportunity to walk that path. But we have to know that we're doing it not for this generation, but for the generation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have kids, but I know that I'm here to do the work that I chose to come here for this time to do.
I mean, you're everyone's mama, Teresa.
Exactly. I'm quantum mother, Teresa.
You're totally quantum.
I love that.
Exactly. And I think that's, that's when we talk about this is not a flash in the pan kind of movement. It has to be much deeper. And I think, I kind of really wish that some of the people that I had invited on could come and share, because a lot of them have experienced prejudice and they were feeling reluctant to. So I hope at some point we get to a place where people in positions of power, some of these people have high flying jobs that they fought hard to get to. They have their own platforms, and it's almost like we don't want to topple.
Yeah, we don't want to shake the apple cart too much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't want to shake things up too much. Yes, we're going to look to see what happens, and then when it's safe, we'll jump on. But while it's happening, no, it's not safe yet. Right? It's not like I don't understand this. I do understand it. But I think this is where it can't just be us having one Zoom call, but I think one Zoom call is a start, because we've got to start somewhere. And I also believe it's not us, people of color, Black people, pushing stuff at, let's say, white people. You've got to, and I was trying to explain this to some people, you've got to come to us to show that you're interested to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we can't be pushing this at you. You've got to say, okay, you know what? Maybe they've got something. So when I say I'm not a racist, but I don't get that perspective, you've got to
who could I talk to? Yeah, exactly. Ooh, who could I ask for that?
But it's so raw, I think. I think that it's quite raw at the moment. So they're feeling a little under attack. So their defense mechanism is coming up. And so so I think the more we share, and the more we show them that it's a safe space and nobody's judging, because, I can't sit here today and not tell you this, but I in South Africa, while I was also part of being oppressed, I was part of the system that was oppressing as well, because in the stacking order of things, I was higher than the Black. So in my home, I was brought up where we had housemaids that, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I wasn't on the reverse end as well. But, I know it's a safe place. I'm not going to be judged. And if we can create more environments like this where people feel safe to speak, I think you will see. But the conversation needs to continue.
Absolutely. Like, I hope all of us, I hope you're all going to share this. And I hope other people will have Zoom calls like this that they're going to share out, because I hope it's going to spread out through the networks of real people having real conversations about everyday life. Exactly. Like, I'm scared for my kid to go to school. I've been pulled over by the cops for no freaking reason. And, like, my client was taken away from me just because, let's say, I'm not white. These are all things every day that happen. And not all of it is because of skin color, but a lot of it is, right? So we're not trying to take advantage of the situation to say, let's like blame all white people for all the problems in the world. No, that's not going to solve anything, right? But it would help, and it's, as you're rightly saying, Teresa and Rocky, it's about getting into people's hearts, because nothing changes because we're demanding it.
Exactly. It's the only way forward. it is the only way forward. And like I said, this is a huge collective dark night of the soul, and race has been the biggest thing to
Taboo.
divide us. Sorry?
It's the biggest taboo that people don't
It's
want
the
to
biggest
talk
taboo,
about.
exactly. The biggest taboo, and it divides us more than anything.
Yeah.
You know, I put that lovely snap on Instagram the other day, those two little boys running to each other. Have you
Oh,
you know, best friends. I remember reading the father's story in Facebook a while ago, like best friends, like they're just running to each other, and like it's like, yes, that's where we need to be. And when
and
we're
kids
living
don't
from,
see color.
yeah, exactly. When we're
They
living from
don't.
here, we do
I have
see
to share
color.
the story because my son in school in primary, and there was a little black girl in his class, and I said, "Oh, who's that black girl?" And he goes, "Wait, who? There's no black girl in my class, mommy." I said, "That little girl." And she goes, "No, she's chocolate color, mommy. She's not black."
Oh,
And
that's
this
so
is the
cute.
innocence of children, and we have to nurture that. We kind of have
Yeah.
to be, we have to police how we talk to our children because
Absolutely.
they're like sponges. And so
Yeah.
I could have said, no, she is black. And I go, oh, oh, you're right. I was wrong. She's not black. She's
Right.
actually chocolate. So I think that's where we have to start.
Yeah.
Because if we don't change how we speak to our kids, they're going to become the next generation of people like us, unable to talk about this.
Exactly.
100%. I mean, Anna, you have two boys, right? What is their experience like in school, in the neighborhood, in playgrounds?
Yes. Well, my toddler, he's almost 2.5. So he, you know, is just in the moment. He's not really aware of all these things. I think the ego drops in at like 3 years old. So then he'll start to like separate and notice things. And then I'm pregnant. So baby number 2, not really sure. But I do think
Oh,
about,
how exciting.
thank you. But I do think about all my students. So I taught K through 12 for many years, worked in alternative schools. So basically like before juvie and after juvie, in juvenile detention, and like did so much like volunteering and coaching in the community. Like, so yeah, I mean, I just love the kids always. And yeah, it starts in the home,
Yeah.
100%. And you just got to expose your kids to different stuff, and like make it genuine, period. Like enjoy it.
Right. And like it's also about kids playing with kids from so many like different kids. Like, for example, I actually did have the experience, right? Because I was in a German school. So I was exposed to many different cultures, and I was international. I was like, a brown kid in China, coming from England, in a German school. Like I've been like I'm just used to seeing so many different colors and races and nationalities and languages. So I grew up like that, but a lot of people don't grow up like that. So for me, when I say don't see color, I don't want to sound stupid because of course there's color, but because of how I grew up, yes, I experienced prejudice, but I just thought, why are they doing that? Like as a child, you think, why are they doing that? Because for me, it just seems so weird that there would be any differentiation. But a lot of people like grow up just white kids in the school, or as Rocky said, only Indians, only colored, only black people. And you would think that in the US it would be different because we see it on the outside as being such a big melting pot, but it's not. Right? So
I would agree with that. Yes. 100%.
it's like the land of the free, where everyone wants to go to the US for all the opportunities that there are, but they're not equal opportunities for everyone. And that's the point.
Yeah. Yes.
Teresa, you are at the moment in the UK. Do you ever want to go back to the US?
It's so
I have
funny.
to ask this.
Somebody asked me that a while ago. They were like, "Oh, was it during? I can't remember. Maybe it was after Brexit." And somebody said, "Yeah, because I'm a UK citizen now as well." He said, "Are you going to go back to the US then?" And I was like, I haven't lived there since 1986. What
Yeah.
makes, what makes you think that I would go back now?
Yeah, because so many people say, oh, do you get homesick, or do you feel like you miss it? And I'd like to hear your perspective.
Yeah, no, weirdly enough, even growing up, it didn't. I don't feel, I feel like a citizen of the world.
I mean, you are a citizen of the world, but a lot
Yeah,
of people
exactly.
don't understand that, which is why.
Exactly. And as Anna said, you know, she sees she sees a world without borders, and I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that is like, you know, animals. A bird doesn't wake up in Germany,
Yeah.
decide to fly to Portugal and like fret about his passport. You know what I mean? It's just like, it just goes. Because like,
Yeah.
man made the rules and then they change them when there's a war and blah, blah. It's not real. It's not real.
I totally agree with you, which is why I was like, Brexit, really now? And nowadays you want to talk about stuff like Brexit when we're supposed to be coming together. But again, this is maybe me idealistic cuckoo land. But I was like, this is not the time to be like making more borders than we already have, which are synthetic anyway.
Exactly.
Isn't that the whole problem in the first place?
Yeah.
And so, you know, this whole thing about the movement that we're having now about like racism and like waking up and like equality and justice and changing structures, doesn't that also begin with stopping divisions where there shouldn't be? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. But again, like division, it's this third dimensional programming of duality,
yeah,
which we're breaking away from. You know, as a collective, we're still in, definitely still in the third dimension, but we're breaking away from it. Those structures, that's not helping humanity ascend at all. And it is through living from our heart space.
you know, a lot of people, they don't speak in our terminology.
Don't speak in our terminology. Okay, well,
right, they don't say like 3D to 5D. They don't say like, the veil is thinning.
Okay, I'll break it down. You see a little kid, like those two little boys in that video.
Yeah.
You see little kids. What are they always doing? Their arms are always up in the air. Their hearts are open. They feel like love because they are love.
Mm-hmm.
That is our natural state. That is our default state. And as we grow up and we sit in structures, now they're sitting in like boxes away from each other in the playgrounds. I mean, child abuse. Anyway, you know, like all the stuff that we end up coming out of school as an adult with all these notions of what things should be like, instead of fostering or nurturing a child's imagination. Because through that child's imagination, through their love for themselves, all babies are born with self-love. Through that is where we're going to help humanity ascend. So we have to get back to that space where we actually feel our hearts. Because when we are living from our hearts, we just love. If we love ourselves, do you think we're gonna bother going, oh, that person's black, that person's white, that person's this? No. when we spend time loving ourselves, we love the environment, we love everything about life. We just want to, you know, we're not going to agree with everybody, but we can love them. You know, even standing in the supermarket queue now with, you know, the crazy people who are fearful of everything, you know, hazmat suit and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of the coronavirus because people.
No, exactly. We won't go into this,
which is fine. I'm happy to be a conspiracy.
But even then, you know, whereas, you know, even 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been triggered like mad, going, "You're stupid," la 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 la.
Yeah.
Now I go.
Yeah, you can believe what you want. You want to go in a hazmat suit, take a vaccine.
Exactly. I hope you feel exactly. Stay safe. I love you. You're a brother or sister. Yeah. You know, and then people are like, why are you so calm? And I'm like, because I'm doing my best to live from my heart. Because literally that is the whole point. of this
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, I 100% agree with everything that you've said. A lot of people, though, they don't even understand what you're talking about, like self-love, because, you know, self-love, you've got to be introspective enough to want to explore that, because most people don't even know. We don't even know who we are.
Or you get hit in the face by the universe who makes you face
Which
it.
is happening now, because I think this is the slap in the face for a lot of
yes.
people.
Oh, yes. And this is what I was explaining to a friend as well, because he was like, oh, but everything I know, and I don't know. Oh. And I was like, take care of yourself. As much self-care as you possibly can give yourself right now. Because we're the ones who are sitting in our own peace right now. Even with all the craziness going on, if we take the time to sit in our own peace, people, as they're waking up, even if their brains are going 1,000 miles an hour, they're going to feel our peace. I've had people walking up to me in the park, like, just like chatting, and then all of a sudden you're talking about whatever. And, you know, I'm giving a stranger a hug and they're going, thank you.
I mean, Teresa, you have that aura that everybody wants to hug you. Like, literally, I walked with Teresa down the street and basically she's like a magnet. So,
let me tell you, listening to you, I want to hug you, because
yeah,
I can tell you,
quantum Mother Teresa, I am.
But I am that person that was not, you know, that's probably this time at home has really forced me to be on my own, to be still, because I'll put my hands up. Self-care and self-love was probably low on my, and I'll be, yeah.
Decades.
So I'm still a work in progress. So listening to you is so refreshing, because, I was yesterday, I was in my mind and I was worrying about something, and, you know, there's a few things going on, but just listening to you, it was peaceful for me. And okay, today I need to do that, you know, just listen to myself. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
You know, Rocky, we're all a work in progress every single day. It's
exactly.
Like,
so am I.
We all come up against our shadows and triggers every day. And it's
but they've been
like
on
the
the
work
stage
is ever done. It's like,
but they've been on the stage for so long. I'm just like, oh, for goodness sake. But, you know, for me, this has been a real time for introspection. And I also realized I really enjoy being on my own. This hermit life really suits me. So,
yeah.
You know.
Yes. I spent decades hating myself. I didn't even own a mirror because I didn't like what I saw.
Yeah. Wow.
So you know, this journey has been huge.
Yeah.
But I also know that this is what I'm here for. I'm here to teach people this. And even if that means just standing in the park, smiling at the sun, and then like people will feel me, even if they don't. I've had people walk up to me going, I don't know why I want to talk to you, but like I just had to say hi, and then just like, do you want a hug? And then they're like, yeah, and then they're crying in my arms, and it's just like, that's why you needed to meet me.
Yeah.
Stuff like that happens to me all the time now.
I mean, I've seen it. I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it, exactly. So I know.
And literally, 8 years ago, I remember coming home one day through London Bridge Station. By the time I got home, I was shaking with rage because I was like, I hate people.
Yeah.
I was like shaking with rage because of all the noise, and I was like, I hate people. I don't even want to be here anymore. I hate people. So going from that to like standing in the park, hugging strangers and helping them engage in their hearts.
Because you did that for yourself first, as you said.
I did that for myself first, yeah. And like you said, it's a progress. I have to have a look at myself every day.
It's literally it's like every day.
It's every day.
And we get to a point where we're more or less most of the time happy with ourselves, but there are times that like I'm super down in the dumps, and then I observe myself, right? Because I've gone out, not totally out, but I notice when I'm trying to fix myself or find a solution. And that's why I think I also go into this like left brain where, okay, so what's the solution here? And the point is the solution is being uncovered.
Exactly.
And that's what's happening to society at the moment. We're all in this collective uncertainty, this collective void, which is the feminine void of creation. We're in the process of jumping dimensions for the people who understand it. But for the people who don't, like, we're shifting from an old world order into, let's say, I hope, please God, a more equitable world order.
Exactly.
And we're now in that process where we're in the void, and it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I said to people, it's going to be scary. It's going to look messy. Sometimes you'll be terrified. I was like, but that's what a dark night of the soul is.
Yeah.
And we're collectively doing it now.
Yeah.
That's why it's a
I'm asking myself, what's next? You know, I get up, I said, tomorrow is Monday. What's next? What's next on the screen? Because
like,
it feels like.
But then, you could go, wow, I wonder what's next.
Yeah, you're right.
What else is possible, right? What else is possible today?
I wonder what's next. Like, this is pretty insane so far. We're only halfway through the year.
I have to say, like, as we wrap up, that I think we're all doing our parts. Like, we all change in different ways. We all affect and impact people in different ways. And all we can do is, again, do our self-work, try to engage with the people who want to engage, because we can't impose our views on anyone. But I think it does make sense to maybe be more vocal, understanding your tribe are going to get you, other people you're going to trigger, and that's life. But we can't shy away from triggering people, because as long as we're coming, from my perspective, this is just my view, as long as we're coming from a perspective of getting people to question, see an alternative. For me, I'm not an educator. Teresa is very much an educator. For me, I was like, these are the tools, now go do your work. Teresa is much more engaging that way. I'm like, hey, look this up yourself. That's my way. Teresa's will go into the rabbit hole with you, where I was like, meet me on the other side, you know? And Rocky, you have your own way by, like, engaging with your family and, like, engaging in your shadows and then speaking to your people about it. And Anna, you have your own way. You know, you work with kids all the time. So the point is the struggle, the fight, let's say the crusade, I don't want to use crusade, cancel that. The journey doesn't end. You see how programmed we are? The journey does not stop here. It's just the beginning. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like, I really hope that we can continue this conversation. I'm hoping that what we're doing will, I hope, help others. But all we can do is just shine and hope that some people want to shine with us.
Exactly.
And we might not always get it right?
Yeah,
I'm like, there's plenty of times I mess up as well. I'm not saying that I don't mess up. I mess up almost every day.
We're human. We're human. That's the whole point. We're human. Yeah. We decided to, okay, I'm going to get a bit woo-woo and out there, but, you know, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and sometimes our meat suits fuck up. That's what happens, and we either
that triggers people, and
we either learn the lesson or we don't.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, we are just here. Those of us who have, like, done a lot of work, we're here just to shine our light. That's the whole point, and to help guide others by holding that torch when they can't see.
Right, and sometimes we also have lessons to learn, like, you know. I, again, put the black square up. I was like, oh shit, I made a mistake. And I was fully like, yes, I was wrong. Like, sorry, I took it down. But I was super open with it. And I know I'm going to make other mistakes like that. But the people who, let's say, follow me, if we're talking about social media, or the people who know me or engage with me, or my clients, they see my intention behind things. And just the same as you guys, I believe if your intention is one of love or opening people's eyes and not pushing stuff on people, most of the people get that. The ones who want to nitpick, you're never going to please.
You're never going to make them happy anyway. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I believe that, especially now, a lot of people are becoming more sensitive to the intention behind things. Absolutely. And not necessarily the mistakes that we might make on the 3D level, like on the
level. I think that's because people, because they've spent so much time with themselves, you know, basically the universe is just going shh. And because they've had that space to spend time with themselves, they've got to know themselves a bit better, even if they don't know exactly who they are. They've gotten to know themselves better, And because of that, even if they're not quite discerning in their mind, they can feel truth, because the truth comes from the heart. So even if your head's telling you something else, you can feel truth, and that will get things going as well. Because it's like, oh, but this feels good. Oh, but this feels good. And most times people will go with what feels good.
Exactly. You know, I've had people ask me, they say, well, you talk about change, and you say, because, you know, I see stuff happening, and I talk about it, but they're like, but that's not detail. I was like, I can only tell you what I see. I can't make shit up for you. I can tell you structures are going to change. I can tell you governments are going to change. I can tell you education is going to change. The stock market is going to change. The economy is going to change. They're like, what does that even mean? Can you give me concrete details? I was like, I can't, because it's not decided yet. Because we're all making it now.
Yeah, but that's that old crazy paradigm as well. Like, you know, going to the psychic so that she can tell you exactly when you're going to meet your life partner. You know, no,
right.
that's not what.
Like, I can tell you things are changing, but I can't. I mean, you know, I've made a few, let's say, predictions, which, if I know something, I know it. But if I don't know it, I can't pretend to know it just because you want me to like spell it out for you. I'm not able to just make shit up. However, I know deep in my bones that we are in a time of disintegration of all the unequal structures. Is it going to happen by December? Probably not. However, I do feel like between now and 3 years, the structures that we're currently seeing and we've taken for granted are the structures that we, you know, like AAA stocks, or let's go to the safe assets. What you think is safe today is not actually mean anything. Who says it's safe?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of where I'd like to wrap up, because we don't have the answers to everything. We're just sharing our experiences, and I thank everyone who's come here today to share their stories. I hope you will share this out with your networks. Again, I'm going to put everyone's contact details down below, so whoever feels called can go into each of your networks or decide to have one-to-one conversations with you and engage with you in the work that you're doing. Because we all have our tribes, and hopefully this will help people create their own little circles that they then disseminate out into their communities. And yeah, and I'm just so grateful to the three of you to come here and share your stories with me.
Thank you.
And I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you for being so brave. And I know I'm going to see all three of you soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Bye, my love. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.